economic developers around the state of Ohio.
Hello.
And particularly in Appalachian, Ohio, on a variety of economic development projects to support communities in our region and across the state.
Excellent. Hina, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to co-found True Choice PAC and how your headquarters came to be in Mason, Ohio?
Yeah, well, that is an interesting journey. So my husband and I, we moved to Ohio prior to starting the business back in 2007 because we found our respective jobs here in the state of Ohio. And we have been very passionate about, the developing products that are environmentally friendly. My husband, being the scientist, he innovated a lot of different products that are tableware products, 100% compostable and biodegradable. And with those products, we decided to start, our business. So back in 2008, we formed a business and started developing a business. That's how we ended up being in Ohio.
Excellent. And so, like I mentioned earlier, you were named the 4th fastest growing company in the Midwest. So how do you think growing a company in the Midwest is different than growing a company on the coast, in a New York or California?
So I would say, because I lived in New York as well, for many years, when we started company here, there were so many different factors were very important. Number one is, of course, capital and talent pool. And of course, that, the bigger, states and cities in New York and California, they have a bigger pool of capital and talent. However, the other side of it is that those, resources are very competitive to do as well. Versus in Midwest, we have a really easy access of capital and also talent pool. For instance, that in the state of Ohio, there are a lot of incubation funds, Job Ohio's, and ready to provide a lot of capital loans, startup seed capital, etc. So with all these resources, starting a company and developing company in my experience, was much easier than I think developing and growing companies in New York or other coasts. So it was really a very successful and favorable experience for us.
Sure. So the past 18 months or so have pretty much upended everything we know about, needing to physically work in the office. Jason, looking kind of big picture, what sort of effects have you seen on Ohio-based companies from this change over the past year and a half?
So even during the pandemic, companies are still continuing to build new facilities and to expand in Ohio. For example, Site Selection Magazine awarded Ohio the 2020 Site Selection Governor's Cup Award for having the most projects per capita of any U.S. state and the second most projects overall. So while there's great competition around around the country for talent, we are seeing a lot of development still in Ohio, even during the global pandemic. I also think places like Ohio are great places to live, and that decoupling of where people work compared to where people live puts Ohio in a great place to compete for talent. And it also places many of the companies that maybe even are located outside of Ohio in a good position to have folks in Ohio work for their companies remotely.
Great. And Hina, for your company specifically, what was attracting talent like before March of 2020, if we're talking about trying to draw people in from outside of Ohio, and how has it changed since then?
So, unlike any other businesses, COVID has changed our lives and people who we work with. So, attracting talent and hiring was a lot easier before March 2020. And after Corona situation, people became, health and of course safety became priority for them. So, people were not easy to get actually jobs, out of their states and cities, etc. A number of other factors that people wanted to work from home due to health and safety reasons again. So all these factors, played a big role, and attracting talent and hiring became very difficult. And most businesses have been facing, the shortage of workers and employees during this time because of these factors. Like at our business, what we did, we started, partnering with local universities and, the Wright State, the University of Cincinnati, University of Dayton. We have partnership and we started internship program and started hiring, the either as the interns or the people who are graduating students as full-time employees. So we address the situation that way, and that has been a very favorable and successful experience for us.
Great. And Jason, I know you're big on wanting companies not only to start up in Ohio, but for existing companies to relocate there. So do you have any examples of companies that have done this, and what kind of outcomes have you seen from this?
Sure. So one of the things that I mentioned is the rankings that we had from Site Selection Magazine here. And what was interesting about that is Ohio also had Toledo come in number one for new projects for metro areas of their size. Findlay, Ohio came in as the top micropolitan, and we had three other micropolitans in the top 10. So we're really seeing companies develop new projects, come to the state, not just in our metro areas, but around the country. One of the ones that I'm most familiar with is Nestle Purina locating a facility in Claremont County, Ohio, outside of the Cincinnati area, where they're going to be manufacturing animal food. And so, that's an example of where Ohio has a great distribution network. It's easy to get goods to market, particularly in the Midwest. And so that's one example where we're seeing companies locate manufacturing facilities employing a lot of workers.
Great. And to keep it with you for a second, Jason, what are some of the industries that are maybe hot in Ohio, compared to another region, especially as we look at the last few years?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. That's an interesting question as well, in the sense that Ohio is a very diverse economy. We have the three major metro areas: Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. But we also have a lot of growth in many of our smaller metro areas and our rural communities as well. We are seeing growth again in warehousing and distribution. Healthcare is another growing sector.
Damn it! Sorry.
Columbus, Cleveland.
Great. We talked a little bit about this, but let's dive in a little more. How do you attract that employee from San Francisco or New York or, anywhere outside of your state where they're going to have to come relocate? How do you draw them in and make them want to come work for you where you are?
Yeah, so Kevin, we are located in Cincinnati, Ohio, where Cincinnati is, of course, the hub of many Fortune 500 companies like P&G and Kroger. And Cincinnati is a very diverse, high-tech, and advanced, and of course, growing cities. So these are quite attracting factors to actually young and talented people. Of course, Cincinnati has a lot of other advantages, that it offers a good family-oriented Midwestern culture, and cost of living is also very low here in Midwest, in Ohio, compared to other costs. Also, Cincinnati offers many opportunities to build careers, just like other big cities, and all these factors really attract young talent. I think that culture is a big and very attractive part for young people. They want to really offer a good lifestyle and a culture and family values to children, and want to devote more time. Where here in Ohio, commute is less challenging and not very challenging to San Francisco and New York and other places. So all these factors are playing a big role. And as I mentioned, because we did partnership with universities, we also expanded our internship programs outside Ohio as well. And as a result, we were able to get talent from University of Dallas, University of Boston, and some bigger universities from other big cities. And those interns joined the company during our internship program, but then we were able to retain them as a full-time employees. And these are very high-tech and highly talented group of individuals, like engineers and some designers, and really the talent that we were able to attract because of such actually programs. But these are really and they're very happy being here in Ohio.
Great. Thanks. And Jason Hina mentioned cost of living there. So let's zoom that out for a second. What is the cost of living in Ohio and the cost of doing business in Ohio, and how does it compare to maybe some of the competitive markets?
So Ohio has a very competitive cost of living. Our home prices are in our three major metro areas, Columbus, Cleveland, and Cincinnati, are well below the price of competing metro areas such as Austin, Boston, and Chicago. If you go into our smaller metro areas or our rural areas, the cost of living, including home prices, is even lower. On the corporate side, Ohio does not have a corporate income tax, and so that compares very favorably to places like California or New York. I think another important point, besides just the cost of living, is to realize that Ohio is insulated in many ways from some of the natural disasters and other devastating effects we're seeing in other states. If you look at what's happened over the last year or so, we've seen hurricanes impact the coast. We've seen failing power grids in Texas, wildfires out in California, record heat waves in the Pacific Northwest. And if you look at a place like Ohio, while the Midwest does have snow, we're really insulated from some of those natural disasters. We have great infrastructure to support our companies. And so when you combine that resiliency in terms of our infrastructure and being a great place to work with our cost of living, we're really doing quite well as a competitive place for people to work and live.
And you mentioned the no income tax. Are there other ways that the government entices businesses there, whether it's incentive programs or entrepreneurship programs? Like, what are some of the ways that the government is attracting startups to Ohio?
Well, I think there is both the effort to attract startups from Ohio as well as to grow startups from within the state. And so there are programs that are out there from Jobs Ohio. Our local governments often have incentive programs that give tax breaks to companies for creating jobs or generating certain levels of capital investment. The other thing that is interesting is that we are also working to help our own startups here within the state. One of the programs that we have is something called the Third Frontier Program, which helps innovative startups in the state. Here at Ohio University's Voinovich School, we actually house Tech Growth Ohio, which is the Third Frontier Program to support 19 rural counties in Southeast Ohio. One of our successful startups that we've been working with is called Sterling Ultra Cold, which produces ultra low temperature freezers that use 70 to 75% less energy than some of the conventional ultra low temperature freezers. And they've really been instrumental in the widespread distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine because of their ability to engage in ultra cold storage. And so if you go to a UPS facility and you look at those freezers that have been storing the COVID-19 vaccine, the engine that runs them, that's produced largely by Sterling Ultra Cold here in Southeastern Ohio. So I think that willingness to not only engage in providing funding to support startups, but the business coaching to help people go through getting multiple rounds of investment is a key factor. And Ohio is unique in that we have something called the Third Frontier Program to help some of those companies do that.
Great. Thank you. And I'll throw this question to each of you. Hina, I'll start with you. What do you think are the biggest myths about starting a company or running a company, outside of New York or California? If I'm somebody in New York, like I am, thinking about starting a company in the Midwest, what are some of the misconceptions I have about that?
So when we talk about, I think, the misconceptions, or talking also about the advantages, to start companies here in the Midwest, the biggest misconception people have is like, the Midwest does not have enough resources and does not have enough pool of capital and talent, and which will not, really make successful companies, from Midwest. And that's kind of a misconception because it is really other way around. In our experience, in Midwest, the biggest advantage is to pull resources, that is in terms of capital as well as in terms of, attracting talent. The bigger cities have a lot more pool of capital and talent, but they are very competitive. So to pull any grants or loans or this type of things become highly competitive live in a bigger cities and both coasts, where there is, I think, a lot of businesses are located, versus in Midwest, any innovation or new things you come, you get a great support from the state and cities and the local government. So all these wonderful programs which Jason mentioned, like Third Frontier programs, Jobs Ohio, and SDBC, Chambers of Commerce, they all have wonderful programs. And in our experience, we did get benefits of many of these programs and did run a successful company, and we are continuously achieving growth. With other, I think, side of it, on the talent side of it also, because the Midwestern universities have so many students, international, national, local students come to these universities, like Wright State Universities, University of Cincinnati. They provide, very high-tech engineers and talent. So for the companies like us, when we are innovating a lot of new generation packaging and disposable products, we have enough pool of talent. And without that talent, we cannot be this successful. So really, there are a lot of misconceptions. When I moved to New York to Ohio, a lot of people were asking me the question, so I had been moving to Ohio from New York, but here we are, 10, 15 years later, and we were able to really do very well in Ohio. So I think that, Ohio and Midwest states are great to, I think, start business and become very successful here.
Great, Jason, I'll throw the same question to you. What are the biggest myths or misconceptions?
Well, I would echo that there is a myth about the lack of talent in the Midwest, including Ohio. If you look at our university systems across Ohio, on the public side, we have not only the Ohio State University, which is a large university with a lot of talented graduates, but we have other universities, the University of Cincinnati, Cleveland State, Ohio University, and many other public universities. Even on the private side, the Ohio Foundation of Independent Colleges and Universities, for example, represents 33 member institutions, and these private colleges and universities enroll about 80,000 students. So if you combine our public and our private university enrollment, we're producing a lot of very talented graduates, many of whom would like to stay in Ohio. And so coupling that talent with emerging opportunities, Ohio really is a great place to be. I also think it's important to think about the cost of the talent that we have in Ohio. A software engineer here, for example, is about 40% less than what it would cost to hire a software engineer in California. So you're combining a great low-cost place to live, work, grow your business, affordable but talented workers. And so, there's a lot of misconceptions that we can overcome. And I think once people visit Ohio and they see the talent that we have here, and the growth opportunities, we are really in a good place to attract not just companies, but also workers.
So we've talked about a lot of the benefits, but, let's talk about maybe areas of improvement. Hina, I'll start with you. If there was one thing that you could change about what it's like to do business in Ohio, where do you think the state can improve, just either in terms of attracting talent or helping you run a business more efficiently?
Yeah, I think, I would say that we are here the beneficiary who not only got a lot of resources from the state and local government, but also we are a successful company. So when I think about it, I have all positives to say. Then I think finding opportunities where more improvement is needed. But yes, of course, that what the state and the programs are doing, like Jobs Ohio and the Ready Cincinnati and our other local programs, if they continue to, I think build more capital and continue to market the programs better, then that will definitely help. I think attracting more companies and talent from the outside Ohio. Like we have had many other states that come and approach and visit us. That if they can offer better programs, and what if we relocate to those states. Similarly, I think it is more like a market and marketing approach. That how to outreach the programs and outreach those companies and help them providing the solutions. If Ohio can do the same, even at a bigger and larger scales, that can attract a lot more I think, companies to the state.
Great. And yeah, Jason, I'll ask you a similar question. You're behind the scenes working to make your state a great place to do business. So what's at the top of your list as far as ways you're trying to seek improvement there?
Well, certainly, again, supporting some of the rural entrepreneurial growth programs like Tech Growth Ohio, again, a Third Frontier program working in southeastern Ohio. So I think continuing to see support for that type of entrepreneurship and innovation in rural places in Ohio and in small communities in Ohio is important. Certainly the extension of broadband to rural places. I work in Appalachian, Ohio, and their broadband is a real challenge. And I think if we can expand broadband to some of the underserved areas in the state, we'll see continued opportunity to retain talent and provide new opportunities to people, particularly, again, as we will continue to see remote work emerge as an opportunity. And so I think broadband extension and supporting entrepreneurial opportunities in rural places, those are two areas where I think the state is making progress, the state's made progress, but there's a lot more still to be done.
Excellent. And Hina, before you mentioned access to capital, as somebody who lived in New York for a while, what are the differences between being in the Midwest and in New York, and how have forms of capital?
Yes, that is an excellent question. I think, that I would say to every entrepreneur that getting capital gets easier as you become more and more successful. The most, I think, the difficult part when you are at raising the seed capital, that's where you need, a lot more resources and, a lot more confidence and support system around you that can trust that anything new that you are bringing, to the market. So I would say that, when I did not operate business in the New York, but here there are so many incubation and startup funds, and those funds really help to not only to listen your ideas, but how to bring your ideas to the market, like STPC funds, Third Frontier commissions, which really heard our voice too when we were starting out our business. So these are the resources have come into the picture. They have reached out and really give access to a lot of young entrepreneurs who have startups and great ideas. And over the period of time, I have seen it that Cincinnati has become a lot more prone and to attract VC funds. Otherwise, it used to be considered more like a flyover state that VCs only invest to East and West Coast based companies and do not invest in Midwestern companies. So this very fast growing companies like us that has so much potentials. We are like 3 times in the Inc. And things like that. VCs are now like looking at us that what we would need for your next stage of growth. Also, the Jobs of Ohio and other funds are looking for us that now if you want to expand your manufacturing, we have so many resources and how the state can help you, take you to where you are to the next levels. And all these programs we have seen them, getting better and better in terms of resources and their efficiencies, etc. So we just would like to become a part of these successful programs and want to continue to grow.
Great. We have a couple minutes left, so I want to give each of you a chance. I want to hear how you would pitch Ohio if you had a minute to talk to somebody. So Hina, I'll start with you. If you're in an elevator with a CEO from Los Angeles and you have 1 minute to try to sell them on your state, what are you saying to them?
Yeah, our state, it has a great, Midwestern culture. Ohio is easy to, attract capital as well as we have a pool of talent. Also, Ohio has the least cost of operating businesses. We have the least infrastructure costs, real estate cost, payroll cost, and many other, expenses that are much lower compared to any other larger cities. And Midwest, is the great spot and the hub with the great access of highways and, the major, the cities. We are in the mid, so our cost of operating business is so low. So you cannot manufacture or develop products at the low cost, just like as Ohio. So we are the best if you are looking to invest in Ohio or Midwestern companies.
Awesome. Exactly a minute. Well done. Jason, same question to you. What's your elevator pitch?
I would say it's a great place to live, first of all, with a lot of talented workers, low cost of doing business, and a place where people are willing to collaborate and engage in working collectively to see our company succeed.
Excellent. Well, that's it for today's panel. Jason and Hina, thank you both so much for joining. And to our audience, we appreciate you tuning in as well. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to the home of the Iroquois, the Buckeye State, birthplace of aviation.
I'll check. I
The
think
Rock
the
and Roll
last
Hall of
speaker
Fame's
today is on the other
location, with
stage.
Cedar Point holding the record for roller coasters in all 4 height classifications. Ohio, home of 145 of the Inc. 5000 fastest growing privately owned companies in the nation. Ohio has opportunities for capital with a pool of talent you could swim in. The pandemic couldn't stop the growth. Here are a few businesses still building. Devour Pickles from Cleveland Kitchen. Glamp in style with ultimate toy sprinters. Make your space gleam with Clean Team. Maintain IT secrecy with Visual Edge technology. MedLab International leads in providing medical supply needs, growing content and audience with Futuri. So many more. Leading in distribution, manufacturing, warehousing, there's a diversity in the economy. 4 top micropolitans, but more than just Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. Toledo ranking #1 in new projects, gain ground in independence. Incubators and resources helping startups beginning the journey to reach the third frontier. Jobs Ohio making the transition here seamlessly. Over 137 colleges and universities. 80,000 students to transition into your next employees. Low cost of living with a lifestyle of high quality. No more getting bumped on the train or dealing with earthquakes. The Midwest is where your home could be. Welcome to the heart of it all. All roads lead through here.
Thank you for joining us. That concludes today's Black Stage programming. They have a black stage and a red stage. Let's go to the red stage. There's one more speaker. And tomorrow's the last day of the Inc. 5000 Summit, and there is a free ticket option. And hello to the replay viewers. And Wolf says hello. He tried to come on and comment, but it wouldn't let me comment on my phone while I was playing the feed. All right, let me see. Wait a minute. Why is it saying register? Oh, I don't want to register. I just want to go to that stage. Stages. What about the networking? I don't think the networking is available with the free ticket. $19. Wait, that's the wrong. I'm trying to get to the other stage. Excuse me. Let's just click on the networking for 1 second and see if you have to have paid ticket. Yeah, that's the one you have to have a paid ticket. Let's go to the red stage.
talent-wise. He's on the board of
Hold on one
directors of
second. I have to check
Singularity
my
University,
allergies.
board of trustees of I would say. Naveen, to me, has always been kind of a classic example of an entrepreneur, a guy who grew up poor, came to America, built a company that made him a billionaire, lost the company, kept on building new companies, always with a strain of optimism that is one of the most powerful I've encountered in my years at Inc. So, Naveen, welcome to the Inc. 5000.
But first of all, it's an honor to be speaking with the fellow entrepreneurs. And Eric, it's always such a pleasure to be speaking with you.
Well, great to see you again. Now, where you came from, what growing up was like for you, and how you came here to America.
Eric,
Oops, sorry. I was supposed to make it small, not close that.
this is probably the toughest question you're going to ask me because I hate talking about myself. So I'm going to try to see how quickly can I get through that so we can talk about the lessons I learned in life that actually may be more applicable to everyone else. So I grew up in India. We were very, very poor. We didn't have a food to eat. We didn't have a place to stay. Came to United States about 38 years ago. And God has been very kind to us. And I really feel that with the kindness that we have received from the community, from universe, I feel that obligation to be able to give back. And I know everybody thinks of giving back as philanthropy or giving money. To me, that has never been the case. I really feel the best way to give back to the society is to become an entrepreneur and solve the problem that improve the lives of billions of people. To me, that's a real philanthropy, is when you go out and solve a problem, be an entrepreneur who creates jobs and who actually solves the problem, not simply give the money, because that's, to me, is removing the guilt from your soul for having done what you did, and that is not a philanthropy to me.
A lot of people don't have what it takes, though, to be an entrepreneur. And you got your start, one of your early jobs in the U.S. was at Microsoft. And a lot of people just make a career of Microsoft and stay there for decades. But you broke out and started your own companies. What drove you to do that?
First of all, every one of us can be an entrepreneur. And I think that people have this mistaken idea that entrepreneurship somehow is about starting a company. Entrepreneurship is about solving a problem. So if you see a problem, you actually come up with a solution and you go out and execute on it, you are an entrepreneur. Whether you're not doing it inside the company, whether you're doing it outside the company, it's all about taking action, executing, and solving a problem. That is what makes you an entrepreneur. And I really feel the reason some people believe that they are not an entrepreneur is because they have this misconception that entrepreneurs are risk takers. In fact, entrepreneurs are far from taking a risk. The first thing an entrepreneur asks themselves is, what is the biggest risk if I do this? And that's the first thing they try to eliminate, because they are the risk eliminator, they're risk minimizer, they're risk mitigators. They're not risk takers. So, and I think the other thing that stops a lot of the people from doing is say, well, I know nothing about this industry. I know very little about this. How can I go out and do something? And that, to me, is their biggest asset. Once you become expert at something, you become incrementalist. In my opinion, you become useless in that industry, because it takes a disruptor. It takes someone from outside the industry looking in, challenging the foundation of everything that expert has taken it for granted, is what literally makes an entrepreneur a great entrepreneur. And if you look at everything I have done, no two companies have ever been in the same industry. In fact, you would argue that I have no reason to be an entrepreneur. I have no background in computer science, having started several companies in the tech.
Okay, Wolf, let's try this.
Background in, aerospace to be starting a space exploration company. I have no background in healthcare to be starting a healthcare company. But to me, the reason continue to be successful is because we are able to look at the problem differently, reimagine, re-challenge, and redefine the problem.
All right. That is like the most clear-headed explanation of the gospel of entrepreneurship I've ever heard.
But Naveen, I want to get concrete about it and talk about the particulars of your own history. So InfoSpace was the first company that made you rich. Talk to me about the problem you were solving, the evaluation you did, the worst risk it had, all the questions you asked yourself when you launched that company.
So actually, I'm going to give a framework of whenever I start a company, how I look at that should I be doing this or not. And having done enough times, you create a framework. So I'm going to give you a framework, and then I can apply whether it's InfoSpace, whether it's a Moon Express, or Viome to that framework, right? So the framework is really simple. So before I start any project, I ask myself 3 questions. Why this? Why now? Why me? And why this is really simple. That says, whatever this problem is that you're trying to solve, God forbid you are actually successful in solving this problem, would it somehow help 1 billion people live a better life? And the reason you ask yourself is not, again, because it's a philanthropy to help 1 billion people, because you know at any time you can come up with a problem that helps 1 billion people live a better life. You can create a $500 billion company. You can create a massive company if you're helping lots of people somehow improving their lives, right? The second question you ask yourself is, why now? Why now means what had changed in the last 1 to 2 years? But most importantly, what do you expect to change in the next 3 to 5 years that will allow you to solve this problem now than it was possible half a decade? Solve this problem now than it was possible half a decade. Solve this problem now than it was possible half a decade.
Okay, I hear an echo. Let me go see if I can get this to play again.
These are converging together. The last part is the most important part.
Okay, let's hear it.
Entrepreneurs go wrong. Why me? Why me is what
Hello.
questions are
Oh,
you
that was
asking
Woof Woof. Hello.
that are different from what everyone else in the industry is asking? Because the questions you ask is the problem you solve. So that is a thing. If you're asking the same questions, you're solving the same problem, you're doing it in the same way. And I think now, having defined this framework, now let me make it very concrete, just like you asked me. That let's apply this theory to more than one industry, so we can see this is really not about one industry. So let's start with my last company, Viome. Viome started out with a simple belief that says, what if we can solve the problem of preventing and reversing chronic diseases, cancer, and aging? And in this framework, by the way, one of the things caveat is you never focus on how, because the minute you ask yourself how, you will get limited by what is possible today, and you will never be able to think about what could be possible tomorrow. So never ask yourself how. You simply say, what is it that needs to be done? So we say, if we can solve the problem of chronic diseases and cancer, would it help 1 billion people live a better life? The answer was 7.8 billion people check mark. So that's a problem worth solving. Then you go down and say, why now? And in this framework, you ask yourself, what are the sub-problems that need to be solved for this big problem to be solved? We say, okay, to solve this problem, we have to be able to digitize the human body. And we say, okay, that is quite doable now. The cost is $1,000. That is very high. But we were absolutely convinced in 3 to 5 years that cost would come down to $100, because remember, it came down from $1 million to $1,000, and we knew it's going to come down to $100. Little that we know, that actually came down to about $15 to $20. Right? So while we were 10 times optimistic, the exponential technology tells us that you're still never going to be able to fathom how fast things are going, and we were still pessimistic. The second thing was, okay, once we digitize the human body, how would we be able to process this massive amount of data? Because we're not going to have access to supercomputers. We say, great, can we use cloud computing to be able to process this massive data? And we did, and it actually cost us about $45 on the first time when we processed that thing. We're thinking, holy God, that's really high. And we were convinced that cost will come down to $10, and we were okay with that. Well, it came down to $2, right? And that was very good surprise. The last part was, even if you process the information, would AI be powerful enough to be able to solve and understand exactly what's happening in the human body to be able to solve the problem? And we were absolutely convinced that AI is going to be more powerful, it's going to become self-learning, and it's going to be all the good stuff that we see today. And we were very good about saying time is now. The last part was the most interesting part. And this is really where the naivete comes in. Right?
Hi, Heavenly Dew. How are you?
Was focused on the same problem. They wanted to know.
Can you hear, or is it repeating?
And it occurred to me, being a non-scientist, that your DNA never changes. So if you were to do my DNA today, and God forbid I gained 400 pounds, my DNA is still the same. Now I have diabetes. Now I have depression. Now I have heart disease. And in fact, I die. Guess what? Even after I die, my DNA is identical to the DNA that was there now. That means DNA can't even tell you you're dead or alive, let alone you're healthy or sick, right? And I thought, my God, if your genes are not changing, I ask everyone, what changes when you develop a disease? And he said, you should know it is a gene expression. What do I say? Let's measure gene expression. And let's not, listen, sure, they start laughing, and I said, whatever, we're going to focus on measuring gene expression, right? And we'll figure out how. And then I said, what else? If we do that, would that solve the problem? They said, not quite. All the research is showing there's something called this microbiome that is in your mouth and in your gut. And they seem to be impacting all of these chronic diseases. So if you were to Google Parkinson's and gut microbiome, Alzheimer microbiome, depression, addiction, pick a name you want, diabetes, heart disease, they're all connected to this gut microbiome. And first thing you would say, oh, eureka, I found something. And then you say, moron, if everyone believes that is the problem, the 10 companies looking at the microbiome, how can you, Mr. Jan, knowing nothing about it, is going to solve this problem? Well, you go back to the framework again, which is, what questions are they asking? Well, it turns out everyone in the microbiome industry was asking exactly the same question, which is, I want to know what microbes exist in your body. And I said,
whoops, I just hit the wrong thing and shut the feed. Sorry, let me get it back. This is the red stage from the Inc. 5000 conference. Now I have to sign in again. You can get a free ticket, and the last day is tomorrow. Inc. 5000 Vision Conference. Let me go back to the red stage and get this speaker to. I'm going to hit play. I'm going to hit this there.
300,000 people, right? And we can now actually tell you what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat. And in turn, we showed that your diabetes come down by 30%, your IBS come down by 40%, your depression goes down by 36%, and on and on and on. And the data that we actually collected from the individuals, now we can do a stage 1 diagnosis of cancer. You know, I lost my dad to cancer, so it is meaningful to me to be able to solve these problems, right? So we have now got the breakthrough device from FDA to be able to diagnose the stage 1 oral cancer, stage 1 throat cancer simply with the saliva. Now we are working on 2 vaccines, and we're going to be announcing with GSK for autoimmune disease and for colorectal cancer. Imagine that, Eric. Someone who knew nothing about science is now looking at solving the diseases that will look unsolvable because we decided to look differently. And that's what entrepreneurs do. And to me, to going back to your beginning, there is no better way ever to be doing philanthropy than to doing things now that will help people live without any diseases, cancer-free, disease-free. To me, if we can ever achieve in our lifetime, imagine we will watch our children and grandchildren live a healthy life rather than ever having to watch them being sick.
So, Naveen, thank you for that walk through the vision of Viome and the history of your thinking behind it. A lot of your businesses and a lot of your approach to entrepreneurship is based on an optimism about exponential technology. And yet lately, techno-utopianism, if I could use that word, has gotten a bad name. And you think about situations like Theranos, for example, the Elizabeth Holmes trial going on right now as we speak. How do you handle at Viome the the sense that sometimes the business can get ahead of the science. So we saw that with Theranos. There's probably a lot of fear about that with your company. How do you handle that in Bio?
To some extent, the technology in itself is neither good or bad. It is what people do with that, right? So in some sense, every industry is going to have some people who are not going to be able to live up to the people's expectations of what is expected of a great company. And, it is a shame. And to me, honestly, it just feels, bad to have an entrepreneur ever do that, where we fail our own customers and not delivering the promises we make to them. So the way we, instead of focusing on what, Theranos did, we focused on what is it that is expected of us. And what's expected of us is very simple. We are actually here to improve the people's lives. That means we have to stay focused on our purpose, which is, are we helping them live better? That means we focused on what is it that we are doing, be transparent, and actually tell them what is we know and what is it we don't know, but we are still learning. Because human biology is very complex. So we tell people that when they join us, they're benefiting from everyone who came before them, but they're also contributing to the knowledge so that we as humanity is able to solve the problem. And we know the good thing is, we are making only the food and supplement recommendation. Thankfully, these are all something that you don't get harmed by. So even if somehow our knowledge is not up to the par, the worst thing that I could tell you is to say, don't eat broccoli and that could have potentially be good for you, right? But over time, we are now learning why broccoli is good for some people, but for other people, it really harms you. So we are able to look at your gut now and say you have high sulfide production. Don't eat cabbage, don't eat Brussels sprout or broccoli because it's going to harm you, or spinach is not good for you because of oxalate pathways in your gut, or you're taking too much protein because we see the protein fermentation releasing too much ammonia. Now, that knowledge is something we learn as we analyze more and more people. That means our recommendations get more and more precise and more personalized. Now, going back to the thing is really always publishing lots of paper, getting the peer-reviewed article, making sure that people know exactly what's behind. So we published a paper on how we make recommendations. We published a paper on improvement on people's health, whether it is IBS, depression, anxiety, or diabetes, and we published that paper. We published a paper in Nature on oral cancer detection, and we got the FDA breakthrough device designation. Then, when we go out and look at these things on biological age, we published a paper in Cell analyzing over 100,000 people. What is your biological age? So to us, if we stay focused on science but be transparent where the science is, so people are you're not setting a wrong expectations of what you can do. So I will never tell someone who comes to us and saying, hey, my dad has a cancer, can you cure? And answer is, we don't know how to cure. I wish we did. But guess what? In 10 years from now, we as humanity should be able to solve that problem. So come help us understand that.
I want to ask you to, if you wouldn't mind, expatiate on a technology issue that doesn't really have anything to do with Viome, but as an observer of the field of exponential technology, you can have an opinion about unintended consequences. And there, we're watching the unintended consequences of social media play out in front of Congress and on 60 Minutes now. What went wrong there?
Well, the social media, again, is, it's a very difficult thing because now you have to some extent, a town hall, you could argue, a virtual town hall where everyone should be allowed to say what they want. But what really is happening is we no longer have town halls. We have a confirmation bias. That means people are seeing what they want to see because that.
Sorry, they do have town halls. There's one tomorrow with Biden.
And that's how the social network make money, by showing you the content that you want to see. So in town hall, you were able to see the both points of view, the both sides of the issues. Now, in a virtual town hall, you are actually actually only seeing the things that you believe in already, and that allows you to keep confirming what you believe, and that starts to create the polarization. To me, the other technology that is really something we have to be careful is around AI. AI could be something that would be the fundamental game changer in every aspect of our life. In fact, it already does. When you look at the washing machine, or you look at a dishwasher, I mean, they are really the AI robots for all practical purposes, right? You look at our Google Maps, I mean, that's an AI that actually telling you what to do. So point is, AI is to some extent is becoming a part of our life, and we don't even see them as AI anymore. And that's the beauty of the technology. When it embeds in our life, we don't even see it as a technology. It becomes as a part of our body, right? Our cell phones, right? They're constantly who would have thought 20 years ago that people used to say, why would I ever want to be found when anybody can call me anytime, and you couldn't leave phone behind anymore for 5 minutes. You panic, you say, it's okay to leave your money behind, but you can't leave your phone behind, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that, technology is going to keep evolving, and there are going to be people who are going to bad people are going to take advantage of the technology to do bad things, and good people are going to continue to bring the world move forward. And if I may just say that, in life, the good people always win over evil. So yes, there are going to be, when you connect all the computers together, there are going to be viruses, but the antivirus always wins out. Every so often, the mischievous people win for a while, but guess what? They still, in a long term, I would say that the good wins over evil.
As I said at the beginning, you are one of the most optimistic people I've ever met. Let me ask you about what it's like to work for you, Naveen. So entrepreneurship is partly about vision, and you've got the visionary thing down for sure. But it's also about getting financing. It's about managing people. It's about making day-to-day decisions. What's the operational side of Naveen, Jane? What's it like to work for you? What's your managerial philosophy?
Well, I think, Eric, everyone should be the same, which is find what you're really, really good at. Because the entrepreneur somehow has this understanding that they're good at everything. Guess what? We are not good at everything. So finding the people who complement you, right? So when you're looking for a friend, you want someone who is just like you. When you're looking for a team member, you want to find someone who is very unlike you. People who actually fill in the gaps in your knowledge. People who are very different. People are willing to say, look, I don't understand your vision thing. You keep cutting the trees, I'm going to keep building the road. They're not going to be the people who are going to get excited about the new ideas, but they're going to get really excited about making sure that you don't fall flat on your face, right? So they are the people who are going to be great operational people, people who build infrastructure, people who do great recruiting, so my job is to hire some of the best talent possible. So if you think about it, I am not an AI guy. I hired the head of IBM Watson, Dr. Banwar, to run our AI. I am not a pharmaceutical person. Guess what? I hired the global head of R&D from GSK to run our pharma group. We hired the person I'm not a genetician, to hire the person from Los Alamos who actually developed the technology to be able to measure gene expression. And by putting this team together, it allows me to simply focus on the thing which I'm good at, to continue to look at where the technology is headed and how to take advantage of it. As an entrepreneur, one thing we have to that we didn't touch is you're going to have ups and downs. And I know you mentioned that many times. Every entrepreneur goes through that, right? And to me, what I learned was, as an entrepreneur, you have to be alive. And the way you know you're alive, you have a heartbeat. And what does the heartbeat looks like? Up and down and up and down. When you are smooth, you're dead. So if you want to find a smooth life, you really are looking for a life of a dead person, right? When you are at the bottom of the beat, all you have to do is hunker down and know the next beat is going to be up. And when you're on top of that beat, never get too arrogant, because always remember, winter is coming.
Naveen, you have a famously entrepreneurial family. Ankur and Priyanka are well known to the readers of Inc. Your son Neil, less so, but still an entrepreneur. What's the importance of that kind of entrepreneurial spirit seeping through your family?
It's really interesting, Eric, you say that, because to me, the entrepreneurs are not born, they are actually nurtured, right? And I think the best thing I could have done for them is not to tell them what to do, but Imagine after my first success at InfoSpace, if I sat at home and say, money doesn't matter, but here's a guy who just made money and now he's sitting at home instead of doing something. Guess what? I showed them I can do the second company and the third company. And again, guess what? Then we did something crazy. So we are going to go to the moon. And all the family members said, Dad, no private company has ever done that. Guess what? We became the first company to ever get a permission to leave Earth orbit. Now, Dad, that you got lucky. Now you're going to do healthcare. We had a family meeting. Dad, you're 60 now. You got to just ride into sunset. You're not going to be able to solve healthcare. And we go out and tell, let me show you. Maybe you haven't quite learned the lessons yet. Let me show you how it is done. Guess what happens? Now the kids are fearless. Priyanka says, Dad, if you think you can solve healthcare, let me show you how women's healthcare is done. And she started a company called Evvy, EVVY, right? Ankur is obviously on to his third unicorn. And, he's just doing amazing stuff all around affordability, affordable housing, affordable rent, affordable senior care. And our youngest one, who is also a Stanford grad, just like his sister, he is Schwarzman scholar. Now he's taking on a challenge of the biggest problem that people face when they buy a house, the mortgage payment. So he's really looking at automating the stuff using the latest technology to be able to solve that problem. To me, again, finding a problem that improves people's life really seeps through all of that. And from our perspective, the lessons we told them was, look, our love for you is unconditional. Our approval is not. And that is really what matters to them, is what is it that we want them to do. We told them that success will never be measured by the amount of money they have in the bank. It will always be measured by how many lives they improved. And their self-worth will never come from what they own. Their self-worth will come from what they create. And if they haven't created anything and they still own a lot, they're a parasite on humanity. So we always say, don't be a parasite.
In the path to being a creator and changing people's lives as an entrepreneur, there are, as you mentioned, many ups and downs. You've had some in your own career. How did you bounce back? Where did you find the inner strength to come back?
Well, first of all, the ups and downs are the events that we define as good or bad. See, that's the thing, is that when event happens, just by labeling them, we actually change our mindset. So when something happens and you say it is bad, we think we are now need to be going through this emotional cycle of something bad happened. Right? Now imagine that when event happens, it is what it is. And all you do is you say, look, universe is my friend. If this happened, this is for my best. And that literally changes everything, because 10 years from now, you will realize the event that just happened that you thought was bad was the best thing that could have ever happened to you, because it made you who you are. Everything that happens in your life, whether it's good or bad, changes who you become. And if you love who you are today, why would you want to change anything before that, right? We all know some people get divorced and they think, oh my God, that's the worst thing that happened. And 10 years later, they say, oh my God, what a relief I got out that one, right? The point is, people don't know when good or bad happens. It is a later part in life they realize what was good or bad.
All right. In your book, you mentioned that Steve Jobs said the best thing that ever happened to him was being fired from Apple. One of your questions, the third question that every entrepreneur should ask themselves before they start a company with exponential potential, is why me?
Yeah.
But I want to spin that question a little differently for you now. A reflective question. So, over the arc of your career, you've had a lot of success. A lot of people don't, and a lot of entrepreneurs fail. You know what the dismal success rate of startup business is. It's the sort of thing that would daunt most people,
Hello.
even if not entrepreneurs. So answer the question for me, if you will, and for the audience here at the Inc. 5000. When you look back at your success and you ask yourself a question, why me? How do you answer it?
Well, I think first of all, it's a great question. And I think the entrepreneurs never fail. The idea that they have may or may not work. And every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea. Entrepreneurs only fail when they give up. Everything else is a pivot. Right? If you go back and look at every successful company, their first idea is not what they actually set out to do. You look at Twitter, that's not what they wanted to do. every single company had changed and morphed into something different simply by starting something, learning from it, and say, well, that doesn't work, but what about this? Well, that didn't work, what about this? And I think, as famously Edison says, I didn't fail 1,000 times. In fact, what I learned was, what are the 1,000 different ways this light bulb doesn't work, so I could come up with an idea that actually did work, right? And that is what the entrepreneurship is. And I can tell you that the best I learned was from our daughter. She started the Abbey, and I was asking her one day, how is the company coming along? And she said, Dad, you know nothing about being an entrepreneur. I was like, wow. And she said, Dad, entrepreneurship is about experimenting to find the idea that you want to go out and build a company. Right now, I'm simply experimenting to figure out if there is a company here. I'm not building any company right now. And that is the key to entrepreneurship, is to keep trying to see what is the thing that will work. And you go out and learn every time you go do something. And that actually allows you to find something that will work.
And for you, that was the secret, that every business plan is a hypothesis and leads to yet another plan. Or maybe another way of putting it is that you're either winning or you're learning, but there is no failure.
Yeah. But I think, the day you stop learning is the day you die. And that, to me, is the key. Every single day, ask yourself, am I growing intellectually, emotionally, or spiritually? And if you're not, go do something. And the best way to find out whether what you're doing is meaningful to you or not, when you wake up in the morning and you don't jump out of the bed, whatever you're doing, you should quit right that day. That's not your calling. Because when people find their calling, they jump out of the bed every single day. Find something you're willing to die for and then live for it. And that's how the great entrepreneurs never, ever get phased.
All right, Naveed, Jane, thank you for keeping us learning here at the Inc. 5000. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, they're done for the day. And thank you for listening with me. And Skate America starts on, tomorrow, but the broadcast starts Friday. Peacock, NBC, probably NBC Sports Network, maybe the Olympic Channel. I'll let you know, okay?